So the Norfolk Military Vehicle Group then, Mark, you actually reenact, do you, or is it just basically a static display that you put on?
Well, we're all members of the Norfolk Military Vehicle Group, but we all have interest in the uniform and the period of history, particularly of D Day and that sort of period. Yeah, out of season we research and just build your collection, get different bits, search on the internet to buy things, look around various different areas, and then we meet during the season. We normally meet every weekend really.
So I'm interested in your jumpsuit there. You're wearing the original jumpsuit, which at that particular time were impregnated for potential gas.
That's correct, yes.
Attack. So they were actually very stiff and raw, weren't they?
Very stiff and very foul smelling.
Yeah. And I think the other problem that you had was that certainly from the British point of view, they were loaded up with additional kit before the drop, which they hadn't practiced with, which caused a lot of problems.
That's correct. All the pockets are reinforced, as you can see on the sides.
And on the legs, you have there what? You've obviously got the knife on the side, which presumably is to release you from the chute if you're caught up.
Now that's actually incorrect.
That's incorrect. Very interesting.
So the actual right leg has a fighting knife.
Oh right, so that's your fighting
which is this
knife.
One here.
Yes.
To actually cut yourself from the lines, should you need to, there's a throat knife.
Very interesting.
Which is hidden here.
Right. Okay.
So that would be to cut you from the lines.
Right. And on your left leg then?
And on the left leg here, a lot of people think that it's a water bottle or something like that, but it's actually a Hawkins mine. So this was packed with TNT,
right.
And then on the side here is a pressure plate. So that could be basically buried, laid down for tanks, and that would take out a light tank. This is a M1 Garand,
right.
Which was the favourite rifle.
Right.
In all the war films, when you normally hit the ping after they finished firing 8 rounds, that's for the M1 Garand. You would have carried 2 magazines for the Colt 45, and then you would have had 2 people who would have carried the caliber machine gun. So one person carried the machine gun, another person would have carried the base.
So would your personal gear have altered or differed much from the Rangers?
Yes, the Rangers were quite different. They were more infantry.
More heavy infantry based.
Yeah. The paratroopers, I mean, there's groups that were allowed to tuck their trousers into their boots.
Yes.
Just little things like that are different.
I'm Peter Sudder.
I'm Chris Buck.
My name's Nobby Clark.
We are portraying the 30th Assault Unit, Royal Navy, intelligence gathering unit of the Second World War. The main commander in charge in London, the Admiralty, was Ian Fleming. He of James Bond, of course, which is where he got all of his ideas, really. Literally, the German forces were disappearing feet away and they were coming up after it, and that happened a lot. But they took the surrender of Kiel and also Admiral Dönitz.
Right.
And in fact, 30th Assault Unit confiscated his Mercedes and were using it as their staff car while they were there. You know.
So,
and they were protected by Royal Marines.
Oh yes, well.
Right. So they had a escort of Marines.
Oh yes, yeah. 30th Assault, the Royal Navy contingent were mostly officers, and they were specialists in different fields.
So Julie, are you wearing the uniform of the Land Army there?
Yes, this is the Women's Land Army.
Okay.
Yep.
And you're displaying here what? Some of the...
This is home front bits and pieces.
Right.
The rations, everybody's rations for the week. Clothing, we'd had a utility mark on the clothing, so we've got some of those. Just the basic things that we would have had in everybody's house.
And obviously we can see here some familiar sights like Kit Kat. That's quite interesting. How come that's blue?
We've got a blue Kit Kat because in wartime there was shortage of milk and sugar, so they would have had plain chocolate on there instead of milk chocolate. As soon as the war was over, they reverted back to the red that we're familiar with today. Gas rattle, yeah. You would have heard. And then you would have had to have obviously got your own gas mask on, which you were supposed to get on first, your own gas mask. Yeah. And then you'd have had the baby's gas mask. You'd have to take your baby put them right inside the gas mask, strap her underneath, doing her all up, and then you'd have to pump on the side to keep the oxygen in to keep her alive. Luckily, although we had the threat of gas, there never was gas, so it wasn't too much of a problem, but obviously it would have been. But you still had to do it just in case.
My name's Dave Sire, dressed as airborne parachutist, as you can see, just about to do the jump.
Okay, Dave, so you're now depicting a British paratrooper who's going to go into theatre.
Sure.
And you're wearing the standard parachute of the day.
That's correct, the X-type parachute, yeah.
Right, and unlike the Americans, of course, the British only jumped with one chute, didn't they?
That's correct, no reserve on this. The British were quite adamant that the chute was so reliable that reserve was not warranted. So no, you're quite correct, no reserve at all.
And you're wearing a Denison smock with an over smock on it.
That's correct.
Interestingly.
What you generally have is got the Denison smock with a nice close cut weave to protect you against the wind and the cold while you're travelling in the aircraft and on your descent. You also have an over smock which helps eliminate any catching on your equipment or your clothing, which might catch on the actual parachute while you deplane from the actual plane itself.
I notice here that we have the zip bag on the leg.
Yep.
When was that first brought in?
Generally brought in early 44 onwards for the remainder of the war. Again, basically for jumping with a lot of your kit in there, a lot of your belt kit, your small pack, personal weapon, extra ammunition. Again, dependent on what sort of role you would be in the battalion or what supporting role you'd be. The guys that didn't have this would have had to wear their gear under the oversmock and stuff their small pack into the front, so they would look like they were sort of slightly overweight with the oversmock protruding out. But in this in particular, you could have anything up to about 80 pounds in total with the weight of what the guy was carrying. The guys were initially issued with 24-hour rations to maintain them for that 24-hour period, and they would try and cram as much food as they possibly could in because they know how unreliable resupply would be. But initially 24 hours, ammunition, food and water, and invariably they would get dropped with containers to resupply them after that 24-hour duration. Now,
I noticed there that the bag is attached to your leg.
Yeah, sure.
Is that purely for movement whilst you're getting into the plane, or
yeah,
what?
Basically what you've got is the leg bag will be attached to your lower right leg there. You've got a braking system here on a rope. Now, well, the idea is you jump out of the plane, the parachute opens. Once you're out of the actual plane itself and your parachute is deployed, then what you're going to do is lower the bag to enable you that to hit the ground before you do. So what you can do is when you're hanging in the chute, you pull this fast release and that will detach from your leg. While you're doing that, you've then got a brake control here, and you would let out this rope as it deploys below you. So this is then under control, going to hit the floor before you do, lessening the weight of the impact of your actual landing. So that's the whole idea of the leg bag, to lessen, you can carry more weight and lessen the impact when you hit. So therefore you're going to lessen any injuries for the actual parachutes themselves.
And as a foot soldier who's got absolutely no understanding of why people would jump out of a perfectly serviceable aircraft, at what height do you guys deploy?
Generally, you're talking anything up 800 feet would be the maximum tactical deployment. Even lower, guys have jumped even lower than that. The least amount of time you're in the air as possible. So as soon as the guys deploy out of the plane, the parachute is opened, they're going to be looking at deploying their bag, and before you know it, they're actually looking at hitting the ground very, very quickly.
101st Screaming Eagles?
Yeah, Normandy, yeah.
On Normandy, so you would have dropped in at where?
Just inland from the beach, the night before, and then the invasion troops will come in, and we've secured the objectives, they come in, relieve us, and then we should go back to England.
This was the common weapon for the American...
This is a standard infantry weapon of the American Army, no matter what service you was in, really, yeah.
And what did that fire then? A clip of how many?
Fires a clip of 8.
Clip of 8?
30 calibre rounds.
Right.
Goes in the top, bolt goes forward, just point and shoot basically. There's no other action other than that. Bolt stays open when you're out.
You also walk the gas mask on as well.
Oh, so that is actually to indicate whether
this will change colour.
Yeah. Presence of gas in the air.
Right.
Just worn on the arms there. So you've got this here. This is what they call the invasion gas mask. This is for troops in an invasion rather than just normal frontline troops.
Right.
It's in a waterproof bag.
Right.
But airborne guys had that as well.
Right. And as we can see, that's strapped to your leg there.
Yeah, it's strapped to my leg there like that. But it is supposed to be worn on the chest. So when you're wading ashore,
right,
you know, the water's here and you're keeping it out of the water, but we're obviously not wading ashore.
Being parachute,
yeah,
you don't want to be anywhere near.
No, I don't want to be near any water. No.
And so you would have what, 24-hour rations?
Have we got any rations?
Yeah, just it's like that, which gave you basic breakfast, dinner, and lunch.
And you would
on the back.
One of those.
Well, that's like one day. That's like 1 day.
That's 1 day.
Yeah, you get three for a day.
Right.
They should have gone into Normandy with 3 days,
3 days,
but you'd have to take it out because you wouldn't get 9 of those.
Yeah. Problem is,
you'd have to strip out all the tins and everything you wanted.
Yeah. And am I right in saying that the standard issue for cigarettes was 200 cigarettes per man for Normandy?
Well, you get cigarettes in these anyway.
Right.
I think you get a pack of 3, I think, in each one. But guys would be able to buy cigarettes and get issued cigarettes before they left. So depending if you smoked or not, or some guys would have took as many as they possibly could. Yeah, they're coming, boys. Let's get ready.
They were designed before the war. They were designed in 1938. The basic tank. The first ones were made in the spring of 1940, and they carried on in production until 1944. This one was built 1943.
And where were they normally built?
They were built by Vickers in Newcastle upon Tyne, Birmingham Wagon and Rail in Smethwick in West Midlands, Birmingham, which is where this one was built. This one had a crew of 3. It had 2 in the turret and 1 driver. There was a different model which had 3 people in the turret, the Mark V.
The regiments came in here to be trained on the Valentine, and then they had to be conversion trained to the Sherman.
Well, by the time the Valentine D Day came into service, the Valentine was close to being obsolete. And so a lot of the people that came here were already Sherman trained as land tanks. Then they had to be converted to floating Valentine. And so the conversion from floating Valentine to floating Sherman wasn't that much because they knew about the basic tank anyway.
How many miles per gallon would it do?
According to the book, it's supposed to do about 2 5/8 on the road and about 1 1/4, I think, miles to the gallon cross country.